Hey everyone, whether you're a depressed housewife or a synthozoid mistaken as a clown, as we all are, welcome to PonderVision, the only show on YouTube where we talk about Vision's penis, I think, right? In depth.
Have we
right?
done that?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we did in the first episode. We spent a decent amount of time talking about.
You're absolutely right, yeah.
I'm your host, Charlie Ashby, and joining me, as always, is...
Ash Jefferson.
Perfect. How have you been?
I've been all right. It's been a pretty good week.
It's been not been too bad. I have to admit, this week felt longer than any other week in terms of WandaVision.
Yeah, it definitely did. Yeah,
usually,
I have a feeling that this next coming week is going to be the same thing. I'm just like, yeah. I keep saying like every week, I don't think this show can get me more excited for the next episode. And then they're like, oh, you thought, no.
And then they introduce Catherine Hahn singing a literal song.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, in that case.
I have never been so mad at the, like, please stand by ending screen. It's like, because I was like, I have no concept of time. So every time that screen comes up, I'm like, it hasn't been 30 minutes, has it? I just get so mad at it.
Everyone keeps saying they get really mad at it. I was like, oh, I'm kind of iffed at this. Then they did the mid-credit scene out of nowhere for the first time in episode 7.
What a weird, weird choice. Yeah.
Then I was miffed. I was like, okay, next week, please.
I think we're getting our episodes next week. I think maybe.
Are we?
I don't know.
Did Kevin Feige say this again?
Kevin Feige. The ultimate source, Kevin Feige.
Some bird.
It is a guy named Kevin Feige. It's spelled differently. Like the E and the I is swapped.
Incredible. Well, we're not the only ones talking about this week's episode on this show this week. We are joined by an incredible guest. Very hilarious. And
one of my favorite people.
Why don't we just bring her in? Hey, Abby.
Hi. So much praise. I love it.
How's your week been?
It's been a week. It was a long week for me too. Just waiting for WandaVision. That's the only thing I look forward to every week.
I feel like my life is like I'm just in idle mode until WandaVision.
Yeah. I barely exist until Fridays at 2 a.m.
Oh yeah, because it's like a different thing for you. Because for me, I wake up and it's already out there. So I'm like, oh, wake up, get my breakfast ready. I'm literally Wanda with the breakfast cereal. WandaVision. It's great. It's the best time of the week.
Yeah, we have started a new Friday morning tradition where at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll just get a text that's all caps WandaVision from Abby.
That should continue no matter what happens when the show's over and done with. Just on a 3 a.m.
Even when like Falcon and the Winter Soldier starts, I'm just gonna be texting Ash WandaVision.
It'll be 10 years later. Just get WandaVision text every Friday.
Oh my god, this show is just so. I think I've never seen it it's been a while since I've seen something like this or attack everyone's minds like that really walk. Because I think even The Mandalorian, while everyone was like very happy to see the show and like we're really excited about certain elements and like everyone loved Baby Yoda, it's been a while since we really come together to be like, okay, what's going on? Like, let's figure this all out.
I feel like Mandalorian is just not that type of show. It's pretty straightforward in what it like tries to get across. There's a couple of things that it did where it's like, oh, go find Ahsoka Tano, and it's like, oh, who's the Jedi that Grogu reached out to? But it's not in like. It really isn't like a show that generates a lot of theories, I think.
Yeah, I feel like for me, the last time I had a show like this was 2017 with Twin Peaks. But even then, that was like a one-off because that was just like a show coming back and stuff like that. So it does feel like a nice surprise to have like everyone come together and putting theories out there. And the meme culture and everything is just...
The memes are just... I'm so dying over that clip from Parks and Rec where it's like, I have a few questions. First of all, is she a dog murderer?
My favorite one of that is that someone just covered in with the blanks and it's just her saying, I am a dog murderer.
You know the meme format where it's what's the guy who plays the Flash on CW?
Oh, Grant Gustin with the
yeah. When he's like is in front of it, and it's Agatha, and then the tombstone is Sparky. I'm like, no.
My I don't know if I've still got the picture, but I'll try and see if I can bring it up my phone. My favorite meme so far was someone made a poster.
Oh no.
Endgame.
Oh no.
If I can find it, I'll show it. I know this is really.
My favorite of the Grant Gustin standing in front of a tombstone one was Evan Peters Pietro, and then in the background it was Aaron Taylor Johnson Pietro.
Bless his heart.
I do feel a little bad for Aaron Taylor Johnson. Like, I just want to check in on him. Is he okay? Is he all right?
Though I do feel like Evan Peters has more like. This is gonna sound so stupid to say, like more right over the character.
Yeah. Oh no! Oh no! I didn't see that one. Sparky. I hate shows and movies where the dog dies. And and like I know it's a show, and I knew it was, WandaVision, but I'm sitting there like holding my dog, like, oh no, never go to the azalea bush.
Especially considering this week they dropped the Cruella de Vil trailer.
Oh,
because like Disney are really going for the dog murdering content.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good big push we're going for.
I feel like they put that "and I killed Sparky too" bit at the end so that any like idea of like, oh, she's conflicted, oh, maybe she's not the villain. It's like, no, she killed a dog, she's the villain. No,
animal cruelty is where I draw the line.
Especially like,
I can excuse manipulating an entire town, but animal cruelty is where I draw the line.
I can excuse gaslighting.
It's like, yeah. 3,000 people screaming in pain. Absolutely fine. Everyone's like, they get over it.
I do. The amount of vindication I feel from the people that were like, Wanda's a villain. Wanda's clearly doing this. She's manipulating everybody. And then they're like, they literally did an entire song that was like, it was Agatha. It wasn't Wanda.
And people still think Wanda might be the villain.
And I'll kill them. So...
just to let everyone know, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to put any comments, any questions for us to answer, because we will answer every question you send our way, except for a few. Just don't ask any weird questions. And any theories, but non-spoiler theories, we'll tackle them as well.
Yeah, like if you know leaks and stuff, please don't put them in the chat. Like,
yeah, if you're the foreign voice artist for Evan years, please don't put in our chat. Which is what happened. Apparently, that's how that scene got leaked a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was the guy who did the voice of his Quicksilver for the Fox films. They brought him back to do it for this.
Interesting.
And he posted a clip or something, and people were like, oh, well, thanks. But yeah, a lot of crazy stuff happened this week. Vindication, I think, for all the people shouting Agatha Harkness.
It's like I knew, but still, I was like, oh my god!
Yeah.
Like, even if you knew, which we all did. I mean, her name's Agnes, and she looked exactly like, it doesn't. I feel like it still hits the same way when she reveals it, because that's the point. She's revealing she's the villain, and also she has a song.
The thing that I really like about it is like, comic people or people who've read like articles about the history of Wanda or whatever know like it's Agatha Harkness, and that's such a cool like moment. But it still works outside of that. It still works like in the context of the show, because the entire show has been setting up Agnes as being like this weird like element. So I really that's something the MCU's always been really good at. Like even if you like know I remember like Guardians 2, like Ego. Yeah. I remember that caught me by surprise. And the same thing with the Skrulls and Captain Marvel. Like I thought I was going in and was like, Skrulls are the bad guy. Great. Because I know Skrulls. Yeah. And like, yeah, they've never been like sympathetically portrayed, right? And then Captain Marvel's like, no, they're not. There's like 12 of them, and they're great. And it's Ben Mendelsohn, and you're like, oh my god, I love him.
And also like, They took that story arc and they took that sort of oh yeah, we know what's happening with the Skrulls, and they made a great sort of analogy for refugees.
Yeah.
Like out of that, which is like another next level step that I don't think most people would take, which I really appreciate as well. And this is like, obviously the main villain is technically grief and dealing with grief, and it is nice to see the whole
villain is
thing.
Trauma. I've never read any Marvel comics. Not by like, I don't like comics. It was just never a thing for me growing up. And then I have a short attention span, so picking it up as adult doesn't sound great for me. But I mean, I knew of Agatha Harkness through osmosis because of Ash. And I like did my own little like research by reading her Wikipedia page. But even if you are a person that like has no idea who Agatha Harkness is, like you can clearly tell that Agnes is not like the others and that she might be in on something. They do a really great job throughout the show, like giving you little sprinkles that like Agnes is not what she seems.
Yeah,
and
I mean, like starting back with like episode 4 where she's like, oh, should we take it from the top? It's like clearly clearly we know that now she was doing it to mess with Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been watching the older episodes again, and there's a lot of retroactive like things you notice. You're like, oh, okay, well there you go. Especially like the Herb stuff when we saw her messing with his head. And, like, oh, of course.
And he's like, like putting the hedge trimmer into the wall.
I think that scene now is so interesting because like Agnes was really playing it up that she was also trying to tell Vision like that something was going on, and then just goes, stop. I think she played him good. Like she played everybody really well.
She's clearly like trying to like tear them apart, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like that's the idea, I think.
Oh,
yeah, and Vision I do love that this episode, Vision, the thing that I love the most about Vision is he's just such a good person. And even when he has no baseline for his history with Wanda, his history as an Avenger, he's still like, what am I doing? I gotta get to my wife. Like I got like and all the people who are like, Vision doesn't really love Wanda, Wanda's manipulating him. I'm like, again, vindication.
Yeah.
That scene with Darcy, when she's like, I've been watching Wanda. She's like, because she's all of us, isn't she, as a character? Yeah. She's like,
Darcy continues her storied Marvel tradition of being a self-insert character.
I mean, basically, if you were around for 2012 Avengers on like Archive of Our Own, everybody included Darcy in the Avengers Tower just so that they had a conduit to put themselves in the Avengers Tower.
Yeah, if you don't know, in like Avengers fan fiction, it was a very popular thing to pair Darcy up with literally everybody. Yeah. And also like Darcy was just there for some reason because she's like an audience, like what you said, like an audience conduit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's just such a great character to have there. Was there a Darcy
2012 Avengers fandom hit different? It was
Steve and Bucky share a room. Clint Barton hangs out in the rafters all the time. Like everybody has
Thor
their own specialized
Pop-Tarts for no reason.
Why does Thor love Pop-Tarts? 2012 Avengers fandom was something else.
That is pure Tumblr, like
Tumblr
at its peak.
It was great. I miss it.
Take me back.
Simpler times.
Like Steve is watching Nyan Cat. Do people even know what that means anymore?
I don't know.
Oh my god! But yeah, there was so much in that sequence, especially with like you were saying about Vision being a very like good character in terms of like being a good person. I thought, and I have to say something that's so good about this TV show and the writing is how the writers keep reminding people of things that have happened before, whether that's using the previously on or just using dialogue to introduce concepts that we know as fans, like hardcore fans, but for normal people, I say normal people, but regular viewers who don't, can't remember everything.
Those filthy casuals.
I mean, to be fair, because those films came out years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Infinity War came out. Infinity War came out 2 years or almost 3 years ago. So it's like, and I think the things that people remember about Infinity War might not be Vision and Wanda's storyline.
Right.
So it was really great to have Darcy just be like, yeah, Wanda killed you and brought you back.
But more so when Vision says, for one, like for me, this feels like it's for another person, but for Wanda, this was literally weeks ago.
Yes!
Yeah.
That's what I've been like screaming. And I've talked about before, like on Twitter, like I have to keep reminding myself that WandaVision takes place a couple of weeks after Endgame. And they make that pretty clear when Monica reports back to SWORD. Like it was only a week maybe that she took to, exist again, and then was like, all right, time to go back to work. So, and especially since both Wanda and Monica were blipped, literally the events that happened 5 years ago for our other characters happened for them like 5 weeks ago. And I think that's another thing that people like keep forgetting when they're like trashing on Wanda for how she's handling her grief and trauma, is that this is not something that she's had 5 years to process like the rest, like a good chunk of the other Avengers.
And she also doesn't have it. What it looks like, she doesn't have anyone
exactly
like, with her to process everything that's happened, because like the person that she loved the most in the world is dead.
Yeah.
So like. And
she's
she might be mad at the Avengers too. That might be like a storyline, because like maybe they gave Vision's body to SWORD, or like didn't like watch it close enough, or didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate the idea of like the Avengers being like, oh, we forgot about Vision's corpse. But like
we forgot it.
Idea.
No, I don't think that would be the case.
We put it in that bag of rice. I swear, I just put it on the counter. Like,
they put it in the bag of rice. Wake up, please. Oh my god. Well, yeah,
I think we'll figure out like what happened with his body probably next week, I imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Because you have to remember, like, for Wanda, like you said, she went from literally murdering the love of her life to save the universe. Having that act, which must have took a lot of, like, I can't even imagine. Have that be in vain because the bad guy reverses time and then murders her husband, gets murdered in front of her, and then within seconds of that has to go and fight Thanos again. Finds out some of the people that she's friends with, like Natasha, is dead. And then Tony dies, who I'm sure she has like complicated feelings for, considering that what happened, like their past, and also like he's just helped sacrifice his life to save everyone. And then finds out.
And then Steve decides to do his Steve thing. And sorry, my dog is whining at me. And like Wanda and Steve had a very close relationship. I mean, that was a huge part of Civil War. It was like, she's a kid.
She's like 30, but still.
Yeah. But like to them, like
like
she's a kid, and like what happened, and oh my gosh, hi Charlie. My Charlie, not you, Charlie. Like everything that happened like in Lagos, like that was a huge part of her trauma too. And so like literally she has lost pretty much everybody she cares about. And how do you even begin to process that in a healthy way? Especially without seemingly the support of the rest of your team, because I think a lot of the other people that she was close to within the Avengers are also dealing with the fact that they got blipped.
Because they've also
had
lost
5
all their
years.
friends too.
Yeah.
And there is something about like Wanda in particular, like Scott gets hope back, like people get their friends, their partners back, right? After 5 years. Wanda doesn't, because Vision's dead. Like, and that has got to be like really like watching everybody else around you reunite with the people that they love.
Yeah.
Except for you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and she probably thinks that it's her fault. That's just like,
And I think what the adverts are very good at pointing out as well is that the way she has processed her grief in the past and her trauma is by latching on to something else. So she, like with the Stark stuff, she goes to Hydra. Then the Hydra stuff, she goes to Ultron. Ultron, she goes to the Avengers, and then she goes to the Vision, and then they all end up going away or going bad. Yeah. And so I don't blame her for going down this sort of path. And also, okay, I guess there's so much you can take from the idea that obviously Agnes can see that. She seized upon that, and then she's using that for whatever.
Agnes is always the one that's coming in. When Wanda is about to have a moment of clarity, Agnes is the one that's coming in. Like when she's having that conversation with Vision in episode 5, I think. Pietro shows up. And now we know that that's Agnes, right? Where she almost has a moment where she's like, you're right. I like... I don't understand what's going on. And then Monica, you can tell she gets through to Wanda, or almost gets through to Wanda. And then Agnes comes in and is like, no, you need to leave. And
you see that as well, like with when she sees the helicopter for the first time, Agnes shows up immediately. Agnes
is the one that's like, hey, have you ever thought about having any kids?
Which is the children.
Yeah. If anything happens to those twins, I swear I'm gonna go steal Kevin Feige's lunch money.
He's like, I can't bite.
Okay, I'm gonna give Kevin Feige a swirly.
Come here, you Kevin. Like that kid from the Captain America. He's like at the back of the theater. Kevin Feige's like, I could do this all day. I have to say, like, I was watching episode 2 yesterday, and I'm so interested about Doi because she can be either nobody, or I'm like, is she Mephisto? Because there's that scene where
literally everybody in this show, every character that's not Wanda and or Vision in this show, it's like we're all pointing, going, "Are they Mephisto? Are they Mephisto?"
Because Agnes goes, "If you want to get anywhere in this town, you have to look up to Doi," and it's like, okay, this is really weird.
Yeah, but she hasn't been mentioned since, so I don't know. I don't know.
She's busy, ain't she? Those flowers aren't going to look after themselves.
Here's my hot take after weeks of saying that person's Mephisto. No, that person's Mephisto.
Are you going to say no one's?
I don't think Mephisto is in this show.
See, that's interesting because this episode switched me around because I was like that last week. I know we keep talking about it, but also I think this week I was like, I think we might actually see Mephisto because last week someone brought up the really great point about like the Chinese censors and why they might go for a character like Nightmare instead because of like religious characters.
I honestly feel like Marvel Satan is a line the MCU isn't going to cross. Like I've been thinking about this week. Mephisto is literally Marvel. Like the popular interpretation of Mephisto is he's literally Marvel Satan. There's the Beyonder and then there's Mephisto. If I'm remembering this correctly, there's like Marvel God and Marvel Satan. But
well, there's two, right? Because Marvel. One of my annoying things about comic books is that Marvel always retcon based on what they think. So there was the idea that Mephisto was the devil who gave the demon to Johnny Blaze and became the Ghost Rider. And
then
like,
they've retconned that like 6 times.
I think we should have like a different Satan. that's actually Satan, and that's Mephisto. Who's Mephisto?
I didn't care for that Satan.
It's like, oh, come on, just make him.
I just honestly feel like when you think about like a large portion of people that are going to watch this show are like Christian right-wingers too. Like that's the unfortunate reality, right? Is like, I don't think they're going to be like, here's Marvel Satan and he has like legitimate horns sticking out of his head and he's red.
Here's Marvel Satan. We made her a housewife. Okay.
We've made her a white busybody housewife that runs the PTA.
The PTA that had for no children until the 2000s.
Oh my God, Mephisto is a Karen.
Because
Mephisto
it's like,
I'm telling you, Mephisto is Karen. That's beautiful.
Please, nobody take anything I'm saying here serious.
And technically, Vision is married to a Karen.
What?
Because Jennifer Connelly plays Peter Parker's voice AI thing in Spider-Man. He's called Karen. So that's my Karen joke for this week. Marvel. No, but I was thinking that like you can't really introduce Satan into the MCU because of the consequences. And like we said, like the Chinese market is very like a lot of money comes from that. Obviously, it's a big audience. But they just introduced the witch who's on the Salem witch trials, and there's an evil dungeon, and there was a book full of magic, and there were demonic heads in the background.
It might be Chithon.
It could be. That's also what I was thinking about.
I was too.
Oh god, it's been years. Oh god.
Don't worry about it. I'll Wikipedia it later.
Read the book. She reads a book. Demon comes back.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty much.
Cool. That's but so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ash.
Oh, so no. Go ahead. I wasn't going to say anything smart.
That's the whole
Would
show.
you ever? Just kidding. You're very intelligent. I think this is so. I think it's ballsy for the MCU to be like, here we're gonna throw in some like things that are you know actually theorized in our actual society, like witches having magic and stuff like that. I think that's kind of ballsy for them to pull that in, because that's not necessarily a what I would think, not necessarily like an Infinity Stone explanation, like kind of like that's why Wanda has her powers within the MCU and stuff like that. Like obviously we know there's no mutants because of contracts, but also like there's no mutants. Like people just aren't born with their superpowers. They get them through other means. And this kind of introduces an idea that like there's actual magic within the world and not just within Infinity Stones.
Well, there's something that's really interesting in the comics about Wanda, which is she is a mutant, and like her mutant power is reality manipulation, telekinesis, stuff like that. But she's also, bringing it back to something in this episode, she's a Nexus point. The Nexus is like where all of the multiverses in the Marvel Universe converge, and few people can like control it. Wanda is one of them, right? So Wanda is a mutant, but she also learns magic. She's like a conduit for like chaos magic, and she learns how to control it. So she has her powers, but she also like studies magic. Yeah, is a thing, which I always thought was really cool. Yeah, and then the fact that they like straight up were like, "Hey, this is Nexus." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." Like,
yeah, that's no coincidence.
I think something else that I want to point out about like Mephisto, Chithon, all that other stuff. I think it's really great. I am kind of sick. The Reed Richards thing really annoyed me. I'm kind of sick of people taking this female-led show and trying to make Agnes can't be the villain because it has to be Mephisto.
Okay,
a man.
Sexy red dude.
Counterpoint, make it sexy red lady.
Dottie. That's why she cut her hand. It was red.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. Was like that. As far as we know, had nothing to like. Agnes wasn't there for that. I mean, maybe she was, and was like, manipulating it, like we see that she was doing with Pietro in Agatha All Along's theme song. But like, I don't know. I feel like that's the one situation, one of the only situations where like Wanda is starting to like get a moment of clarity, and Agnes.
But it's
is
also
not
the moment where
Jimmy
Jimmy is talking to her on the radio.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like that's why she's having that moment of clarity of, oh, wait, something's wrong. And like Agnes is supposedly not there. So
there's also someone skipping that moment as well.
Yeah.
And now we know that Wanda might not necessarily be editing the episodes.
Yeah.
I think the implication is that she isn't. Right? Because Agnes is literally sitting in a director's chair in that one shot, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And the voice changes, obviously, so that it doesn't give away the gig. But it seems to suggest that obviously she's behind all this stuff. So if she was editing that scene with Jimmy and the voice, like we see when they're actually watching back the feedback, who knows? I mean, Dottie is still an interesting, like, because we don't have, like, even with Agnes, her picture was on the wall. I don't think Dottie's picture was on the wall, right?
No, it wasn't. It could have just been an oversight, though. I don't know. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that idea, I think.
Yeah. The thing about the Reed Richards thing is that because we're going to get into it, I think
people are so mad. It's so funny.
If you're mad at that, that's your fault. There is no way in a million years that they're going to introduce a character without setting it up or even casting said character. Kevin Feige has never done that. He's never been like, by the way, here is like... we always know that there's going to be like some sort of casting call.
Yeah.
There's no way John Krasinski was going to fucking be like, hey everyone, and then like stretch and get like a blowtorch and go, I'm Mr. Fantastic. And then the big orange guy go, it's clobbering time. Like, that's not going to happen.
And it'd be very bad if it did.
He's like introducing himself to Agent Wu and like whap to shake his hand.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really annoying that people were very insistent on that because again, it's like this is like a female. Vision is a main character, right? But it's really about at the end of the day, it's about Wanda and Monica, like really.
100%.
And it's one of the only like properties in the MCU that is genuinely a female-led property, women at the forefront. And then people are like, no, Reed Richards has to be in it. He really doesn't. What about Sue Storm? How about why was it the conversation is Sue Storm in WandaVision?
Well, technically, you could argue that she's in every single episode.
Sue Storm's been in the MCU all along.
Debate me. Can we put like a video up and have like a screen grab from like an episode of or like a film and just do a circle around nothing?
That's the YouTube. That's the YouTube thumbnail we do. It's just a red arrow pointing at nothing.
Is this Sue Storm?
Wait, is that Sue Storm? But in the Marvel universe,
is this Sue Storm?
It's like when people are like, oh, Ant-Man wasn't in the scene. You just couldn't see him. Like, what are you talking about?
Part of the hex, you just can't see him.
The thing about that sequence, though, and obviously we introduced that army character.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't know about everyone else, but do you guys think that that is a character that we've seen so far? Because I do.
In what context?
I'm absolutely convinced that that army character is actually Talos' daughter from Captain Marvel.
Interesting.
Because we know that Monica has a relationship, like a friendship with her, because they set it up near the end of the film, where they're sort of like being friendly. And obviously they must have grown up together. And there's that conversation where she's like, I'll do anything for your mum. Sort of like she's
yeah,
this, like,
your mom's
connection.
not the only one that I'm loyal to, Captain. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
And also,
I kind of read that scene as just. I kind of read that scene as just like they respect Monica, like like
100%.
Because Monica was Air Force before she was part of SWORD, right?
I think so. Yeah, they're wearing they're wearing Air Force. Like I was in the Air Force, so that's why I can. I'm pretty sure they're wearing like Air Force.
I specifically the second time I watched, I was just like. I specifically was like looking for the patch and it says US Air Force. And so I think that's kind of and maybe she's more important than like the importance that she has. And that would be cool if she were. But like, I like the idea that Monica was just like, well, I still have friends in the Air Force. So I'm going to call them instead.
The reason why I'm convinced it's that character is because I know that the actress who plays Monica spoke out and said you won't believe who that is, and that's why everyone's like, oh, Reed Richards. So I was like, I think it would be a nice twist if like she obviously changes and it's like the Skrull like face, and that could tie into Secret Invasion.
I forget that this is also kind of like leading into Captain Marvel 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
As well as like Doctor Strange. I'm glad that it hasn't been so far. I'm glad that it hasn't been so blatantly like, and this is happening in a movie in 5 years. Like, I think the most we've gotten is probably the twins, like hinting at that.
But I think they are doing that though, but like just in a subtle way. Like we talked about last time.
It's not like that scene in Age of Ultron where Thor goes to a hot tub.
I'm dreaming of
Here's
Ragnarok.
what's happening in 3 years.
That scene at the end with like, there's Infinity Stones. Tony's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I need to go away for a bit. And then like, thank God that they changed that in that beginning of Ragnarok. He's like, I couldn't find any. So good.
I'm a dumbass and I couldn't find anything.
I think
went to a hot tub for no reason.
There are those subtle things where it's like we talked about last time with Vision's body being used by Sword could tease into Armor Wars and why Rhodey's investigating traces of maybe like Stark tech and stuff that's been used in a negative way. I keep
forgetting that is a thing that's happening.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, we're getting a Rhodey show.
What?
So good.
That's why they couldn't recast Gina Carano with Don Cheadle.
Yeah, he's busy. He's got to save Tony Stark stuff.
Good for him.
Also, the Secret Invasion, obviously, like it tie into like Sword and maybe like the good version of Sword is what Nick Fury is working with, which is why at the end of Far From Home, which is after WandaVision, could be him doing that sort of stuff. Also,
that's why Fury needs a vacation.
Yeah, he doesn't know where his shoes are because Wanda took them away.
He just hears about what he gets a call. It's like Wanda's doing some shit, and Fury's like, I'm on vacation, man. Like,
but that's perfect because that means the whole family ring him up about stuff. Like the parents are like, everyone's asking about the Avengers, Spider-Man's doing this stuff, and then the daughter rings up. It's like, look, Wanda invaded the town, and Nick Fury's like, look. Screw this, I'm in space now.
Talos, you deal with this. I'm going on vacation.
But you're saying about like the Air Force and like blending in the Air Force, but we have seen that before with Marvel. Sort of like blending in herself and joining like the Air Force and doing that sort of stuff. So maybe that's just continuing that sort of legacy of helping out wherever they can.
I'm suddenly realizing that I remember absolutely nothing from Captain Marvel. Because wasn't Marvel the Great Intelligence?
No, the Great Intelligence took the form of Marvel to trick.
Oh. Yes, I'm remembering now. I saw that movie once, never saw it again. I'm not a fan of Captain Marvel, but...
I watched it again recently. I'm actually one of the rare fans of it. I just feel like it just makes me feel like a classic MCU film where it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It's not like the best film, but it's like you know, like listening to a TLC and seeing a cat eat a cube. It's great. Why don't we delve into some of the chat?
Isn't it?
I don't know. Everyone who hates that bit of No Doubt, I love it. I don't know why.
That's my favorite part of the movie.
Yep.
Let's look at some of the questions we got. And if you're watching this, don't forget you can ask questions on the YouTube comments. Any theories you have? Let's go through. Austin says, now that we're done with the sitcom style episodes, which ones have been your favorites? See, a lot of people have been saying that, like they've been ranking episodes, which always makes me uncomfortable because it's like, I don't like seeing stuff last. People really don't like the first two episodes, but they might be my favorites.
I think the first episode is my favorite. I'm a huge fan of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and the fact that they were able to like encapsulate that show and that style of comedy so well.
Perfectly.
Perfectly. It's amazing. And Paul Bettany, I think, is like Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen just killed him. Paul Bettany especially, like, he really, really sells that. So I think the first episode might be. It's not my favorite in terms of content, but in terms of like the sitcom style, it's my favorite that they've done. But I also really liked the 90s episode. Just because I feel like they got the vibe of like Malcolm in the Middle, like late 90s, you know.
Yeah.
Really well. Howl moment.
I love all of them. It's too hard to choose because like
they're all good. Yeah.
I forget that I'm not watching that I'm not watching a sitcom starring two Avengers. They nail it. I think purely for nostalgia factor, it's the late 90s, early 2000s episode because like they just hit it so perfectly that it like got me right in my feels, and like that blatant narrating to the camera done by the kids, like it's good. It's good.
The ska soundtrack.
Yeah. Like
when you're walking down the street, you know, hear ding, 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 ding,
yes. And Pietro being the cool uncle and teaching his nephews how to shotgun. Like, it's just
the cutaways, which they did in this episode as well, which was so good.
Oh, love that.
I love that. I love that Vision legitimately had a look into the camera like he's on The Office moment.
And I liked how they framed it this week, where it seems like it's actually happening in their heads. Because like Vision's in the van, and then he's like cutting away, and then out of nowhere, it's like, what's going on with the flyaway? I will say episode 1 is my favorite in terms of the sitcom style, because it's purely sitcom. I'd say, but obviously apart from the last second.
Yeah.
Episode 2, I really loved I Grew Up With Bewitched. So I really love that opening title sequence with episode 2.
The magic show too is like one of the highlights of the show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was just doing on Twitter, there was like which MCU character does best sums you up? And I did the drunk Vision. He hits the door and he's like, I'm so sorry.
Drunk Vision is one of my favorite parts of this show.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany deserve awards for everything, because they are so good at like every single style of sitcom, every single emotional beat. Incredible.
Yeah.
What else have we got? So Madison says, I've been wondering why Sword has Vision's body and not the Avengers, which is a good point. I don't know what the Avengers are doing, though, to be fair, because obviously, I mean, Steve is, I don't know, having a nap.
Steve is Tony's now Joe dead. Biden. Tony's dead.
No, I don't think I will.
He's like 95. What do you want from him?
Yeah, like Steve is getting pulled from life support at this point.
Doctor Strange is probably
in hospice care.
Doctor Strange is probably going around trying to figure out what the heck happened with all the Infinity Stones. Yeah. So he's like, and then he just gets like a call. Like Wong is like, Steven, we have some problems. Go deal with this. It's magic. It's your jurisdiction.
Bless his heart. Yeah. What else? Like Hawkeye is like getting shouted at by Velma because his hair. Like that way, and she's like, "No."
It's like you got a tattoo. You got a tattoo sleeve and that stupid haircut. What was going? How do you think he's gonna be like? Yeah, so I kind of went on a murderous rampage.
She's like, "Oh, that really scared me. Can we have a trip to Japan?" And he's like, "I'm not really allowed there anymore. I kind of murdered everyone." Madison also says, can Wanda have one good thing happen to her in this universe? Hopefully. Let's see what else we got. Swara says,
really hope the message of this is not Wanda has to lose everything again.
Yeah.
I really hope that like either the kids or Vision make it out. Hopefully both.
Yeah.
That's what we talked about last week, how there are opportunities for Wanda to still get a sort of sad ending, but not in a way that has to involve death. Because I think we set up last week the idea that our like ultimate dream is if Vision gets the kids and Doctor Strange is like, look, you need help. I can help you deal with your trauma. You can't see them until you do that. Which I think is a sad ending, but doesn't involve like dead kids.
And then it sets up an arc for her in Doctor Strange 2.
Absolutely.
For her to be like working towards
a goal, yeah.
Yeah, seeing her kid. And then the movie can end and she can like run into Vision's arms with the kids and then we can all be happy for once in our lives.
Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness is just all about Doctor Strange getting like his social work license to help Wanda deal with her trauma.
He's got a little stick out every time she doesn't invade a town.
I mean, that is actually something that Strange does in the comics, though. Like, Strange and Wanda have that kind of relationship where Strange very much has tried to help Wanda.
Yeah, like a mentorship type of deal.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like therapeutically. I was like, oh, okay.
No, I mean, that too. Yeah, in House of M, the most like popular Wanda story, unfortunately, like it opens up and Doctor Strange is like, Wanda is like using her reality manipulating powers she's like giving birth to her kids and Vision is there and Strange is like, no, Wanda, you can't do this. Like, and he's kind of like helping her kind of work through that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, everyone keeps saying Agatha is a good person and that she's not a villain in the book. Her terms of therapy is wiping her mind and making sure that she never remembers having children.
Yeah, it's like what I was saying last week. It's like, yeah, Agatha, their relationship might not be antagonistic, right, in the comics, but Agatha's complicit in a lot of the horrible things that happen to Wanda, like more than complicit, like almost responsible. Like,
and everything that happens afterwards, it's like knocking down dominoes and going, oh, can't believe they all fell down. It's like the first one.
Yeah, Agatha in the comics is actually the one that tells Wanda to like open her powers up so she can have kids in the first place, which is what started everything going very badly for Wanda.
Oh, BT dubs. They're actually pieces of the Devil's Soul. FYI.
Oh, cool.
I'm gonna wipe your mind and you'll never remember them.
Oh,
she's like, excuse me.
Cool.
And then, of course, that blows up in her face.
Yeah, and then she's like, no more mutants. And then everyone's like, this is Wanda's fault. We should kill her.
Meanwhile, Agatha's just like, just slowly back out of the room.
So I'm gonna babysit the Fantastic Fox kids. Be right back. Let's see what else we got. Swara says, do you think that the X-Men will be introduced via the Fox universe or from the MCU itself? I'm still... This will lead into a question we have later on, but about who is Pietro, but...
I think people need to stop expecting that we're going to get X-Men after this.
Yes.
I don't think we are. I think we're going to get them in like 5 years because they're not a part of like the current like Marvel plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly, that's a good thing, right? I would hate if they would just like try to like shoehorn X-Men in because they have the rights now, right? They're like, they have like a plan and we'll get X-Men when we get X-Men, I think. And it sucks because I love the X-Men and I wish that we got like good movies of the X-Men, but I don't think we're getting them anytime soon or even a reference to them anytime soon. I could be wrong. Like maybe Pietro is actually like Fox Universe Pietro, but I think he'll be the only one if that's the case.
That being said, someone did come up with a theory, which is what if Hayward is using Vision's body because he wants to create Sentinels? I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. And it's like not necessarily against mutants.
He does show some anti-superhero bias.
Yeah, he does.
Yes. Like I can imagine there being like a senator in one of the upcoming projects being like, this is all the superheroes' fault. We should wipe them out. And we don't know what could happen. Like I feel like this is a great starting ground for what the mutants could be. But I don't think we should expect an answer just now. And should we just delve into the Pietro stuff quickly to get that out of the way? Like who do we think Pietro is?
I think I was talking to Abby about this a little bit. I think he might actually be Fox Universe Pietro. I think maybe because of Nexus, like the idea of Nexus is multiverse, right? And we know we're getting a movie called The Multiverse of Madness. My thinking might have been Agatha is also like a Nexus. I can't remember if she's like a Nexus being in the comics or not. I'd have to look that up. She is. Okay, yeah, she is. So Agatha could kind of like introduce the concept of the Nexus to Wanda and be like, I just needed a way to like manipulate you. So I plucked this random Pietro.
Boy.
Yeah, because there's that end credit scene. Pietro, he doesn't like say anything antagonistic. He's just like, "Oh, you're snooping. Why are you snooping?"
Snooper's
He's got purple eyes, though.
What was that?
Is he?
I think he's got purple eyes.
I'd have to watch it again.
Because Monica can see all the like the spectrums now, so she kind of sees the magic that is around. So she sees like the basement is full of purple. I think his eyes are purple. So I was like, maybe he's being controlled. I don't think he's a bad guy, though.
No, I don't.
I think I was having this conversation with you, Ash, of like, I like the idea that just because Disney owns the rights to Fox now, that she's going to pick out like different Fox characters. So we get like, Chris Evans, Johnny Storm. with no explanation. It's just straight up Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. And like the bit is like people being like, you look so much like, has anybody ever told you look so much? And like he just cuts off and like, Tony Stark. Oh yeah, I get that all the time. Like,
that would be brilliant. That would be amazing.
Yeah. And like just no acknowledgement that's just Chris Evans.
I think we are going to do that because Ash, you can correct me on this. Isn't the idea of the Nexus that when they're like the focal point for different multiverses, they're the same person? That kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
I think so.
that could introduce the concept that maybe some other people do change or alter in different dimensions, and that's why there's like a different
there's only a few people that have like access to the Nexus, is my understanding. I could be totally wrong. It's been years since I've like read that part of the comics, but my understanding is there's only like a few people who have access to the Nexus, and that's why like Mephisto and Chithon and everyone wants a piece of Wanda, because she is one of the people that was just born with being a natural conduit for the Nexus. So I think it would make a lot of sense if Agatha, like, who also is like a Nexus being, it's just like, I need a way to like get Wanda on my side, and the easiest way is her brother. So she just like plucks like Fox Universe Peter Maximoff out of his universe and plops him in the MCU.
Yeah.
Do the twins? Because, like, if the twins have that though, maybe that's what the plot for Doctor Strange is, and that she's trying to save the twins.
I don't think Billy has it. Again, it's been a while. Tommy definitely doesn't. Like, Tommy runs fast. Like, that's all he does.
But they could have changed it with the MCU sort of thing. So rather than being fragments of, instead of being fragments of Mephisto's soul, it might be something that he wants from the twins, and that's why they've disappeared.
Interesting.
I do think we're going to definitely see more multiverse shenanigans in Doctor Strange 2. And the thing I'm most excited about, and I've been talking about, I joked about this for years. And then when they announced who was directing Doctor Strange 2, I was like, oh my god, they could make this canon. Which is, I don't know if you remember, but in Spider-Man 2, when they're trying to come up with names for Doc Ock, Ted Raimi's character is like, what about Doctor Strange? He goes, it's taken. which means that it could be our Doctor Strange who can travel through the multiverse, and it's like that's the same Benedict Cumberbatch. And also,
I mean, Tom Holland said it's not happening, but we did get a bunch of those rumors that like Tobey Maguire and Andrew,
the notorious liar.
Yeah. Tom Holland.
I just felt like I needed to add the qualifier that Tom Holland said it wasn't happening.
You know what? I think they told Tom Holland that because if he did know, he would accidentally say something.
I think Tom Holland has worked with, like, Tobey Maguire in a Spider-Man suit, and they're like, he's not in it. He goes, okay. No.
Yeah. That's not Tobey Maguire. That's just a lookalike. Oh, cool.
I have heard that apparently, like Tobey has signed something, which makes me feel like they are going to do that for Spider-Man 3.
I think with like the critical success of Spider-Verse, right? Spider-Verse introduced a multiverse concept, and in one movie you get what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think maybe that might have been the thing that made them go, we can do the multiverse and not have people like immediately like be like,
confused.
What?
Does that mean we can bring Doc Ock from Into the Spider-Verse in and have Catherine Hahn?
Catherine Hahn plays every villain in the Marvel universe.
Don't, I want that.
I want that.
I feel like we need to talk about Catherine Hahn for a minute because, goddamn.
We need to talk about Monica as well in a second because
we do. Oh god, yeah, we do.
We'll get to that in a second. Let me just quickly read through some of these questions and stuff. Swell also says that we need black indigenous people of color as the Fantastic Four. That'd be awesome. The only qualifier for me for the Fantastic Four is that they have to be exposed to cosmic rays, which can be anyone. FYI.
I think John Cho would make a really good Reed Richards.
Yes, I do. I was talking about this yesterday with my friend Auden. I do think Doctor Doom should be played by a Romani actor.
Especially because they dropped the ball with Wanda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. Someone said Freeman Adjaman as Sue Storm would be incredible. Like giving Martha Jones as Sue Storm. Yes, please.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh my god.
Madison J says Tiona said in an interview last week that the show is going to be epic and really sad. No. Yes, but it can be really sad without having to be traumatic or having death. Like we said, like it can be sad, like Wanda having to say goodbye to her kids or something. Like I can't see you for a bit. That'd be really sad, but it's not like her seeing them in the basement getting stabbed by a demon. You know?
I really don't think that the MCU is going to do the whole, her kids are actually the shards of a demon. I feel like that's just...
I hope
Then
not.
again,
I would, if anything
they killed the
happens
dog.
but if anything happens to Tommy and Billy, I would kill everybody in this room and then myself. So, but Catherine Hahn is.
Do you think we're going to see the kids bite her?
I hope so.
I hope
you know
so.
what? Do it.
Revenge. Yeah, let's talk about Catherine Hahn, who is incredible, and I think people call it the Renaissance. Renaissance.
I like
The
that.
Renaissance.
Renaissance.
I saw a tweet the other day where someone was like, "Yeah, now's the time to tell the story of when I met Catherine Hahn in a bar during Pride Month, and I told her it would be homophobic if she didn't take a picture with us, and she just screamed, 'I love the gays!'"
Me too, Catherine. That means Catherine Hahn loves me. Catherine Hahn has said
That's
loves
canon.
me.
That's another.
Yeah.
Did you purposely move your head to show the bisexual flag behind you?
Yeah. Wait, what? Which way did we go? Yes.
I'm gay, as proved by the flag. Oh my god, I would love.
If I
that
don't
so
mention that I'm queer on every podcast that I'm on, was I really on that podcast? No.
And the kids, obviously, it'd be cool to obviously have more queer representation in the MCU.
Yeah, because if my understanding is correct, I haven't read comics in a few years, but I think Tommy is bi, and Billy is gay, and is like the most like prominent gay character in Marvel.
What if that army woman is Talos' daughter? She's like, "Hey, check out this guy," to Billy. It's like he's called Hulkling.
His name's Teddy, and then Billy just kind of stands there like.
And just Vision's like, Vision's like, I taught them well. Like, horniness. Because this show has been very horny. I think someone mentioned that the other day. Like, no one really talks about how horny this show is. And
Yeah,
it's true.
I feel like people for years have been saying like, "Oh, Vision can't like Vision can't like want to have sex with the woman that he loves." And the show is like from the very first episode where he's like, like Wanda's wearing that thing. He's like, "What are you wearing?"
Which same
Chili con carne.
Yeah.
Well, that scene where they're carrying the twins, and he's like, "I went to get my leg up." I'm like, Jesus, Vision, holding some kids. Oh my god. Russell says, "Yeah, Billy is gay and Tommy is bi." Good for them.
My gabies.
More representation in the MCU. Oh my god. Suarez says, "What if Billy and Tommy become Jellicle cats?" Right, so we're gonna have to ban him from the chat. You can't have cats in the MCU unless.
No.
Wait, what's Agatha's cat called again? Ebony, right?
Ebony, yeah.
Sorry, I know this is what the show does. We keep jumping back and forth. I'm still convinced in terms of Evan Peters. Like you said, he is either Quicksilver from the Fox universe, or my other theory, which I mentioned on Twitter, which everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" is he's a rabbit. The reason I'm saying this is that in the comics, Agatha's got a son who is a villain, who's called Nicholas Scratch, who famous nickname for like the devil and stuff, witchcraft, and obviously the rabbit's called Senior Scratchy. So like, if she needs someone to pretend to be Pietro, she could just be like, go out there.
That's a galaxy brain theory if I've ever heard.
Pietro's a rabbit.
It'd be great.
I mean, rabbits are really fast, right?
He's got grey hair.
Oh my god. This is so stupid. Rabbits are really fast, right?
See, people are agreeing with me in the comments. So I'm just saying, I think that he could be Nicholas Scratch.
I feel like we need to talk about Monica, though.
Yeah.
No, we do. Because Monica is one of my favorite characters in the whole MCU now.
I've mentioned on the podcast before that my Captain Marvel is Monica Rambeau. Like when I was reading comics growing up, she was Captain Marvel because I read a lot of 80s Avengers books. And I didn't actually realize how much it was going to affect me to see her become, I'm going to call her Captain Marvel because to me she's Captain Marvel, but Photon or Pulsar or whatever, like they decide they're...
I think Spectrum is what they're going to go for.
Yeah, Spectrum might be cool. Or we know that her like mom's like call sign was Photon, so she might go with Photon. I don't know. But seeing her get her powers and the fact that she gets her powers and has the perseverance to like move forward because she comes to terms with her grief. That I cried for like an hour after the episode was done because it was the combination of like seeing this character that I've loved since I was a child on screen in a way that I never, because people stopped caring about Monica Rambeau in my brain years ago. And the fact that she's like leading a show now and she gets to be this incredibly powerful character. I'm going to start crying again. I apologize.
I mean, yeah.
And
it's
then
a powerful moment.
Yeah. And then her talking to Wanda and being like, this is like the pain is my truth, right? I don't want to change anything.
That's one of my favorite moments of this episode. It's such good writing. And it's such a great way of like dealing with grief and trauma and seeing how getting involved in Wanda's story has helped her deal with her own grief is just so good. And you know what I found really interesting as well? And I watch reaction videos and stuff like that. It's been really great watching people react to Monica. And while there was a lot of like negative stuff about Captain Marvel and like Brie Larson and like people saying, oh, Carol didn't deserve the power, she didn't work for them and stuff like that, which is whatever. I can see it from certain points of view. I mean, like when the sexists say it's like, shut up. But when other people are like, she didn't really work for it sort of thing, I can kind of see that. But with Monica, every single person I've seen has been so on board and like rooting for her from the get-go. And watching that journey, I feel like in a televised form, was a great opportunity for that character.
And the thing that really bothered me about Captain Marvel, right, is like in the comics, Monica has no relation to Carol Danvers, like at all, right? And I understand that in the MCU, like the way to introduce that character is probably through Carol Danvers. But I was mad that they like because my thinking was we're gonna get Monica, but her story is gonna be so wrapped up in Carol that it's not gonna be. Because in the comics, she gets her powers and just decides she's going to be a hero because she's a good person.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought that we weren't going to get that. And, like, we see that Carol's words impacted her and the way that, like, Carol being a presence in her life made her the person that she is today. But it is not because of Carol that she gets her powers. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would have been really easy for them to just be like, she's connected to Captain Marvel. Something happened, and I loved that it was like her decision to run back into the Hex to help people.
Yes. And that was a discussion I had the other day with someone. And someone was like, well, yeah, because she worked out the, because she's really smart, obviously. And she knows the calculations that it's very likely that she didn't make it through. And I was like, no, she did that because she's a good person. And she knew that she could die. Yeah. It doesn't matter because like the same with Vision. He went all the way through that, not because he wanted to run away, because he wanted to tell everyone these people need help. He's
literally dying and telling people to help the people inside the town.
That is the sign of a hero.
I mean, and Monica has that whole conversation with Darcy where she's just like, I got your blood stuff back, and you can't go back because it is rewriting your cells at a molecular level. And that's why Monica, part of why Monica is going in through this heavily armored thing. Hopefully maybe that won't, impact it quite as much, but she knows exactly what she's going in, including when she's talking to Darcy. I think what's so beautiful about it too is I know exactly what she's going through, and I'm not going to let this person do it alone, because I can see that she is grieving. This is trauma. She's not doing this to be a bad guy. She's not coping in a healthy way. And I'm going to be the one to be there for her. And I think that's really powerful too, especially talking about like a female-led show, is the story of these two women who are grieving and going through some of the most traumatic stuff in their life, especially having missed the last 5 years of existence.
And it's also really, they both don't have anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, Wanda has Vision now, but like I think that's like the idea is like, I love that Monica, like right up to the end, I mean, it's not the end of the show, but the end of this episode was like, Wanda, don't let them make, I know what you're going through. Don't let them make you the villain. Yeah. And, but she's still, I think it was also great that she was still rightfully angry at her. She was, when she was like, the only lies I told were the ones that you put in my head.
Yeah.
She's not sugarcoating it.
Right. Yeah. Like, and I think that was just kind of like because it's really easy to be like, oh, Wanda clearly knows what she's doing. Right. And deserves, somebody needs to tell her that. It needs to be like, you are doing a bad thing and you need to stop. That doesn't make her a bad person, especially when you're in like grieving and trauma, like as someone who's like lost a parent, right? How you react to that is you're not like the best version of yourself right after that happens. Yeah. So I really like sympathize with Wanda, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, no, you need to like figure that you can't like keep doing this because you're hurting other people in your life.
It's an explanation, not an excuse, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
It's visualized in like the whole episode, like with the terms like depression, and something that I really like. This episode hit a lot home. Like I've been doing this a lot recently myself, and so I was like really emotional this week. Like hiding in bed and like just putting the covers on is the physical like representation of what she's doing. She knows that if she gets out and does this stuff, like she could probably like help herself, but sometimes you don't want to, you just can't. Yeah. And so that's what she's doing. She's hiding in the grief and the fake reality because she doesn't want to deal with that.
And she also thinks that like the last person that she had in her life, I mean, other than her kids, doesn't want her anymore. Yeah. Right.
Or thinks she's evil or a villain, which is what everyone always said that she is.
I really do appreciate though how Wanda said, if he doesn't want to be here, I can't make him.
Yes.
Which, you know, she was kind of like a snide comment, but at the same time, it's like, no, she's not gonna like tie Vision to a chair, like, because she does love him, right? And I thought that was really great.
It's just so much in this episode like to dive into, and like you said, I think what they do as well is a great example that you can't be extremely firm on someone who's going through trauma or grief because it doesn't work and it's not healthy or not helpful. But at the same time, you can't completely sugarcoat it either. You can't be like, oh, Wanda, this is so hot. Like, I really feel bad for you, because you have to have a bit of, like you said, Monica speaks out. It's like, no, look, you're creating harm yourself by doing this. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. You need to think about what you're doing. Yeah. That whole sequence with just Monica, like dealing with that. But like I said, that whole sequence with her going through the, like, what's it called, like the hex, is, to me, up there in the top 3 moments in the MCU in terms of like a visual experience.
Yeah.
For me, number 1 is still the mysterious fight sequence from Far From Home, because that is a comic book on screen. And this is like painful. Number 2.
Yeah.
And this is like, you're seeing her fight against different realities and time, and you hear, like you said, all these people that have had an impact on her as a person. So you hear her mum, you hear Nick Fury, you hear Carol, and it's just so cool seeing that all come together. And then when you see the 2 eyes turn blue, you're like, okay.
I really loved that, like that. As she's breaking through, the line was Carol being like, when they were giving your mom kids, they handed out the strongest one. And like Ashby's like breaking through, and then she again, I cried for like an hour after that episode aired.
Yeah. Can I be therapist Abby really quick?
Yeah.
She's an actual therapist, by the way. I feel like we need to
I loved the, like you were talking about, Charlie, the visual of like you know, like different parts of Monica, and then like it all coming together, like right as she's like, all right, I've worked through like very quick for working through my grief, but I've worked through some of my grief and that's making me stronger. There's this idea like therapeutically that we call parts work. And it's this idea that, you know, within your timeline of your life, you have traumatic events that happen. And if you aren't able to work through it or cope with it, or weren't given the resources to do that, there's like a little part that pops out of your timeline. So, you know, however old you were when that happened, when that traumatic event happened, that's where that part will stay. And you'll continue going on through your life, and you might have like other little moments where your parts are coming out. And the way we do that is way we cope with that and treat that is like you focus on those parts, you find those parts and figure out what they needed during that time, give them the reassurance of what they needed, and like essentially also give them what they needed, and it'll start to integrate back into the timeline that is your life. And so like, I'm sure that's not what they were going for, but like seeing like the literal physical embodiments of different parts of Monica then all coming together, like as a therapist, I was like, oh my God, look at the MCU dealing so well with trauma. Star Wars could never.
And they, you're right. And they bring that up in the speech because she says something along the lines of like, it's a part of me. And I'm sick of pretending it's not.
Yeah, the worst thing in my life like already happened to me, and I can't pretend that it didn't. And like I wouldn't change it because it's my truth, I think is what she ends up saying. And that was what really like got me more than I think like anything else in this show is like the stuff with Monica is as I lost my mom when I was 12, right? And it's like what you were saying, it kind of like fundamentally changes your life in a way. And the fact that she's like having to like speed run through her processing of it.
Speed run trauma.
Hey, there's shit to do. We gotta go. You gotta work this. Which is really sad, you know, that she's not really like given the time and the resources. But just that whole scene, I just really like. Yeah. And I know that it's going to be way worse in the next 2 episodes.
She gets so close to getting through to Wanda as well. And I think she did get through to Wanda. It's just that Agatha has that.
Well, and it's easier to not confront your trauma. Like, she is talked about throughout these couple of throughout multiple episodes is like, why would she let this go? Like, even if she obviously didn't create this, like there are parts of it that Wanda is complicit in, but like you think about it from her perspective, she's getting everything she wants. She gets her the love of her life back. They get to get married. They have children together, and they get to live this idealized suburban life. And so being confronted with like having to face that trauma as opposed to continuing to use the coping mechanisms that you've been using, like, of course I'm going to go through, or I'm going to pick the thing that makes me feel happier in the moment.
Like, there's also, it's a pretty good representation of what can happen sometimes when you're going through a really traumatic event, which is people in your life can enable your bad behavior.
I was about to say, like emotional gatekeeping and like abuse in terms of like, it's difficult because with Monica, Wanda is naturally, and she's not completely wronging thinking she doesn't have much trust with her because she knows that this organization who like, literally like 2 days ago
fired a missile at her in front of her children. Yeah.
Like
I really liked when Wanda just like let go, where she was like, yeah. It's like, oh, dang, Elizabeth Olsen, okay.
And Agatha is there, like you said, to enable that behavior and to go, well, actually, I think that you're right, Wanda, and that you shouldn't. And, you know, that does happen.
She gaslights, I mean, ever-living hell out of Wanda. And I think that you had brought up earlier, Charlie, the scene in in the most recent Spider-Man with what the hell is his?
Mysterio.
Thank you, because all I had in my head was Mephisto, because of y'all. I think that's one of the most heartbreaking scenes in Marvel, and makes Jake Gyllenhaal one of the scariest villains in the MCU, because he just gaslights the ever-living hell out of Peter. And that's exactly what Agatha is doing with Wanda. But for Wanda, at some points, it feels good, because then she's not having to face what actually is going on, what actually happened. And like you were talking about earlier, the important thing is, like, you can't be like super firm with like trauma, but you also can't sugarcoat it. And you need to be like, listen, like, I understand where you're coming from, but like, cool motive, still murder kind of thing.
I never really thought about that Spider-Man link, because you're right, because that's also a term, that's also like a post-Endgame character whose trauma is being manipulated in terms of like losing a mentor and
like not living up to that. And I mean, I remember like watching that scene in theaters and like feeling physically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like in the best of ways, because they did it so well. But like it is I think it's hard for anybody, but like especially those of us who are trauma survivors, to like see that played out. But like they're handling it really well. Like extremely well.
One of my like biggest fears with the show, turns out that at this point it's not happening. I was really afraid for most of the show that they were gonna like make Wanda the villain, right? And because of comics, because comics have not handled let's just say that comics have not handled Wanda's mental illness with grace. We'll just say that. And I was afraid that they were gonna like do that in WandaVision. And I love that from the very beginning, it's clear that the people that are saying Wanda is crazy are the bad guys.
Yep.
And you know, like she's going through a thing, and she's partially a victim in this situation. Yeah. And you can be a victim of trauma and still do bad things. But but it doesn't make, again, like doing bad things does not make you a inherently bad person. And I think that like that's a level of nuance that a lot of people on Twitter don't understand. But you know, like I love this show so much.
That was the thing I was looking for in reactions to the episode, because I watch reactions on YouTube, and there's the scene where Monica is talking. It's the same scene, the one where Monica's talking to Wanda, and she goes, "Stop! Don't think of yourself as the villain." And then she goes, "Maybe I am the villain." And I was looking for that specific response, because it tells me how. It tells me about people's behavior. Yeah. And if someone goes, "Oh yeah," I'm like, "Well, fuck you. You're wrong." And if people go, "Oh," and people did do this, they go, "Oh no, that's not true." I'm like, "Thank you," because she's not the villain.
Yeah.
When you're in the thick of trauma, when you're in the thick of like an abusive situation, particularly, which is a background that I come from, and people keep telling you that it's your fault your entire life for the situation that you're in, you start to believe it. Right? Like I came from like a background with abusive parents, where my mom would pin stuff on me all the time and be like, "Yeah, this is your fault. Why would you do this to me?" And eventually, when every day of your life that behavior is ingrained in you, you just go, "I'm a shitty person. I'm a terrible person." And it's still something that I have to like actively combat against to this day. And I feel like that's what's going on with Wanda.
And like especially with the I'm sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I was just gonna say, that's happened throughout her whole like life. People invaded her country. She wanted to fight back against natural injustice and gets labeled a terrorist. It constantly happens. It's like, okay,
it happens in Civil War too, where everyone's like,
Lagos, and there's an accident, which of course has disastrous consequences. But again,
she ended up saving more people than she would have if she didn't do anything.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. I think that moment of like, maybe I am the villain, also ties in with when she's doing the interview part, and the interviewer says, "Do you think it's because you deserve it?" And whoo, boy,
that hit a lot home, because we all have that voice in our heads, especially when you have like anxiety or depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that voice is always there saying, "Look, you're the problem. You're the one doing this wrong.
It's your fault.
You're not good enough."
Mm-hmm.
And Agatha being that manipulative role and acting as the voice, it's just such a horrible thing. And what I did like about that is that Wanda speaks out against it. She's like, "You're not supposed to talk."
Right.
And then again, that cuts into the advert. So Agatha's like, "Look, we'll put the advert on now." It's like so manipulative, so well written, so well done in terms of trauma. I feel like the series has done a great job delving into that. We said it before, Ash. The MCU are very good at taking elements of the comics that are good, and even the bits that have good concepts but weren't executed great. For example, we brought up Hank Pym beating the hell out of Janet. I don't want to see him do that in the films. That was a mistake that happened. That was an artist mistake where it looks like he hits her, and then they're like, "Okay, well, he's abusive to women now. We'll put that in the comics."
I think this is what I keep thinking about is this is the good version of House of M. Mm-hmm. This is House of M from Wanda's perspective. If House of M was from Wanda's perspective and not everybody else trying to be like, should we kill her? This is what I want House of M to be. And if they were ever gonna do, I mean, this is clear that this is the MCU adaptation of House of M, right? But handled with way more complexity and nuance than I ever expected out of them.
This is one of those shows that, like, if I have a client who likes Marvel and stuff like that, I'm like, so your therapy homework is to watch WandaVision, because we're going to use that to talk about ways to cope with trauma. And you're going to tell me what resonates for you. But I mean, like, even I've had conversations about WandaVision with my poor therapist who is not necessarily into Marvel, but like,
me too.
Yeah, I'm like, thank you, Michelle, for humoring me. Of like talking about how well they portray this and like they handle it so respectfully. I'm blown away, like both as a therapist and then also as a person who lives with mental health disorders and with trauma and stuff like that. Like the way that they have handled the mental health aspect, the trauma aspect, the grief aspect on this show is amazing. And
it makes, like, I always kind of have that fear. It's like, okay, maybe they'll screw it up in the last 2 episodes kind of thing, but I don't think they will. I think they've like, unless like something goes horribly, horribly wrong, like I think they like understand, because for that, again, like my biggest fear with this show is like they were going to treat Wanda as like because the history in Marvel is to be like, oh, Wanda's the crazy one with reality manipulating powers, but that is never what. It's clearly the bad guy is the only one who's saying that, right? Like from
what
the
would
very
you do
beginning,
if there was a portal like Endgame, and then Patrick Stewart wheels out, and he's like, "We should kill her." I think we should kill her. That's what's dangerous about that. Like, I think what's really interesting is that, first of all, the placement of the series that happens to come out during the second year of COVID, when a lot of people have been by themselves, live by themselves, or have been very depressed and naturally upset. I think that's a very interesting placement. Obviously not on purpose, but just in the universal concept of things. Right. What a lucky place to have that. But even luckier to have, like you said, the good version of the House of M. Because from an audience perspective, if they went full on like the comics, we've had 22 plus films of getting to know the Avengers. If we had a story where the Avengers and the X-Men were like, we need to kill Wanda, it's cray. I think most people be like, okay, well, they're the Avengers, so we agree with them. They're the good
I mean, that's
guys, right?
why like people don't really question House of M, right? It's like
in the comics, they still treat her like dirt, and you're like, that's not quite how we should react to that character and that concept. But oh my god,
and
there's
like
just so much
Wanda has been dealing with the weight of that for the past like 15 years, and I don't know if the comics version of her is ever going to get out of that. So it's very nice to see the MCU kind of give I love comics Wanda a lot, but because of these like terrible writing decisions, I've always kind of felt like she never was what she could be.
No.
And I feel like with the MCU, we are finally getting Wanda Maximoff as she should be, handled with the grace that she deserves, I think.
Yeah.
And the nuance that she deserves. And that's just been really great.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have, I have to say, it's cool to have like a positive male character like Jimmy, who is like, hold your horses. She's not a terrorist. She's a person going through trauma and grief. And I feel like that's a good role model to have as well, actually.
I love that this shows like it doesn't have any like toxic masculinity besides the bad guy. You've got like Jimmy and Vision, both who are like two incredibly kind, empathetic people. And like Vision is just like a good dad. Like I love that the first thing Vision says to Darcy when he's like asking questions is like, "Are my children okay?"
Like even like background characters like Norm, who is literally gone through grief and is like having people screaming in his ear. The first thing he does is that he asks if his dad's okay and if he can help his sister out.
Yeah,
which I think is like so good. Like there's even the small little bits. I've asked some quick fire questions before we wrap up. Swara says, do you think or hope we will get a Scarlet Witch movie after WandaVision and the Multiverse of Madness? I think, quite frankly, if you're going to tell more solo Scarlet Witch stories, you should continue doing it in the televised format and maybe like rebrand WandaVision somehow. Mainly because I feel like the televised format is a great way of delving into the solo characters a bit more. Like if we had this with like the Phase 1 and had like a whole series of Captain America, that would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
2, because I still think we should have a Spider-Man series. Like I feel like if you had a Spider-Man series where every episode is dealing with not only episodic villains like, oh, the Shockers come out or the Vulture's back out, but also it's like when you read those comics, like I used to read the 60s Stan Lee, John Romita Sr. comics, and half the issue would be like, oh yeah, Vulture's back. But then the other half would be like, I can't afford the bus home. like I've got a cold and Aunt May's making me some soup and I really need the soup. Like I kind of want to see that, and I feel like televised does a better job of that. What about you guys?
I think completely agree.
Has done I can't believe I'm saying this, but like I think Marvel Television and at least what it is right now, and then also like Star Wars television are the better ways to tell these stories because you get more time with those characters.
Yeah. Like The Mandalorian doesn't work if it's 2 hours.
Exactly.
You need the 8 hours of Din and Grogu like getting to know each other.
Exactly. And I think it works wonderfully as a TV concept. But like, would I still like go and enthusiastically see a Scarlet Witch movie? Absolutely. Yes. But I think I would prefer if it were in a TV show.
There are also like characters that are inherently better suited, like Moon Knight. A Moon Knight movie would not be great. An episodic Moon Knight TV show? Hell yeah. And I think Wanda is one of those characters because whenever like the Vision and Scarlet Witch comics in the 80s are actually a really good, like, I love that miniseries so much, and they're just kind of dealing with like small problems. But big event stuff is when they bring out the whole Wanda has reality manipulating powers. Like, I feel like there's some characters that inherently work better in a episodic TV format. Like She-Hulk is another one too, where it's like, I don't know about a She-Hulk movie, but like a crime procedural show, like courtroom drama.
Have a different case each week.
Yeah. And like a Jessica Jones movie wouldn't have worked, but the Jessica Jones TV show is amazing. So, well, the first season is, but yeah.
You're not a big fan of the mum coming back, being evil as well. Is there a Jessica Jones season 3? I don't think I've ever watched it.
There is a Jessica Jones season 3. I have not
there you
watched
go
it.
Then. You're right about Moon Knight. I feel like you need to have like one episode per personality with Moon Knight.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing with Moon Knight, though. I'm not like super well versed in my Moon Knight knowledge, but my understanding is like,
adore Moon Knight.
It's just like he has like a different. There's like one of the more recent comics. It's like a completely different thing every issue, right?
Yeah, like he has a different. What I liked about the recent sort of last like decade is that sometimes he has like different outfits depending on which personality is in charge. Like sometimes he has like the mask and then like a nice white suit. And then he has like the classic like cowl. It's like the Batman stuff, like the throne, the moons and stuff, which I think is just pretty cool. Again, you can't really tell that in a movie.
Yeah.
Especially got like 2 hours. Like, can we really get Moon Knight to do this? Probably not. Also, I love the idea that everyone's opinion on Moon Knight, because he's not a well-known character, comes from that made-up Photoshop of him saying, "Hey Dracula, where the fuck's my money?" Have you seen this?
Yeah.
like clearly made up, but then it's come to the point of meme culture where people think that's a real
people think that's like I saw a bunch of tweets when like the casting announcement came out, or like quote unquote casting announcement, but they were like, "Oh, I hope this scene's in the TV show." I'm like, this scene isn't even in the comics.
It's also, I was like, the thing that annoys me about that is that there are so many actual like snippets from the books where he has these like conversations that are like fucked up and I think still work. Like, you could have had that instead. Like, for example, there's this one moment where he's talking to the Punisher, and he's like, Punisher's like, "Still crazy?" He goes, "Yep." "Your family's still dead?" "Yep." Jesus Christ, that's actually from the comics. Like, there's so much with that character you can do, and like you said, I feel like it depends on the circumstances. I also want to clarify as well, I don't think WandaVision would have worked if we didn't have Age of Ultron up to now.
Sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
Like, you're like, this is Wanda. Ta-da! Like, wouldn't have worked. It's all about the context of like those things as well. Yeah. Madison J says, "I do think having a woman showrunner really helped with how things were portrayed in the show, and the writers and director, aren't getting enough credit." I agree.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
It's the same thing with like Witcher is another show, right, that has a female showrunner, and you can tell like every female character in that show, for the most part, is like kind of wonderfully complex and well-rounded. Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like with that, like, people assume, oh, we're gonna get all like just badass female characters. Well, one, why is that a bad thing? Two, for me, it only just proves that it doesn't just, it's not like women, the male roles go down and then the women go up. It's the opposite. It's both become more complex and more intriguing. I would prefer seeing characters that are kind of like Hayward, and then characters that are like Vision and Jimmy, as opposed to all being like macho, like, "Oh yeah, I'm a good guy, but also I'm the bad guy." It's like, you can't really tell who's who.
I also think that something that's not getting enough attention is there's one director for 8 episodes.
Who's amazing.
Which is very uncommon in TV. And I think that brings like a level of like cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Who has worked on sitcoms before, which I really point out. He worked on New Girl. So this week's episode, I was like, oh, I could just imagine like a New Girl episode with Vision and Wanda. That would have been great. But before we wrap up, I think it's natural to say, where do we think we're going to end these 2 episodes? Like, what do we think is going to happen?
I really want to be like, Vision's going to survive and the kids are going to survive. I don't think that's happening. I think the kids are, but Vision isn't. There's just too much talk about like accepting death for me to be like, yeah, Vision's going to be fine. Though it did, I don't know, that scene where Darcy was like, "You two belong together." I'm like, oh, that's going to come back and be extremely painful next week or the week after. Yeah, I don't think Vision's making it out of this. Yeah. But I honestly have no idea where this is going to go. Which I love. I love that I have no idea where it's going to go. But my hope is that at least the twins make it out. And I think they will, because they're like incredibly popular comics characters that are going to get their own movie in a few years, I imagine. So,
and like, I mean, from what I've seen on Twitter is everybody loves Billy and Tommy.
Everybody, they're pretty universally loved. Yeah.
No, I mean, but like, even just in the context of the TV show, like people like myself who have never really read the comics being like, "Oh no, we love Billy and Tommy. And if anything happens to them, we'll kill everybody in this room and then ourselves."
That line where Wanda's like, "Their father's got vibranium skin." They literally have
Vision's made of vibranium. They literally inherited tough skin.
So good.
Beautiful.
Whoever came up with that line is just great. There's been so many like crazy lines that, when you think about it, it's just so good in terms of a comedic level and also comic book level. One that really hits Mr. Hart when he goes, "You're awfully dense, Vision." that line is just, I love it so much. Like, you can control density.
I really liked that they were able to make the scene where Vision's like, so Wanda killed me? Like, comedic, like, funny.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Ash, you and I were having this conversation where I was like, I think it would be really cool that, like, obviously Agatha is the antagonist, but Hayward is also a really big antagonist, and I like the idea that they'll, like, Wanda and Agatha, like, after they've settled shit, are going to have to team together to go against Hayward. Like, at the end of the day, Hayward is the big bad. I hope that's what happens. I think that's kind of along the lines of what will happen, because didn't we have like one of the trailers or TV spots, like Agatha saying something along the lines of like, this is our home?
No, Wanda says that.
Wanda says that. Okay.
Wanda says that to Vision, and Vision's like, then let's fight.
That's right.
It. Yeah.
That's right. So I like the idea that, like, they have to team up to go against, like, the enemy of the enemy is my friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, kind of thing.
I think what might end up happening is Wanda is dealing with Agatha because she's kind of the only one who can, and Vision and
Team
Monica. God, it's like, wait, there's so many like names that end in A. Agatha, Wanda, Monica. I think Vision and Monica might be fighting Hayward.
Okay.
Maybe
because Vision is there's this whole subplot that he introduced about, he wants to use Vision's body for some reason.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, he's got a reason to want to fight back against him. I still think, like, I'm a pessimist at heart. So, like, well, that's not true. I'm an optimist at heart, but there's that pessimistic feeling on, like, I think Vision will be dead, but actually I feel like he might survive. I don't know whether that's just my heart speaking over my brain or vice versa. I feel like it's a good opportunity to bring him back, and, like, again, it's proof that it's not, like, there's no, because there are repercussions to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want him to be dead, and I feel like there's enough.
I think
to do.
I feel like maybe it's enough to just know that they brought him back in the first place, to be like, would they immediately kill him off again? Because for him, it's been like, well, I guess 5 years, but for, like for Wanda, it's been like 2 weeks. Would they be like, you died, and then like, and then kill him again in like 2 weeks? I don't know.
The thing that I think Darcy brings up, where she's like, you can't leave the hex, which confuses me, because I was assuming that last time it's because he was forcing himself to get out, and the hex is like forcing him to stay in. So will it be a case of, once Wanda has control over the hex properly, in terms of, like, no Agnes or Agatha dealing with it, will she be able to control it so that he can leave, or will it just be that?
I think maybe Agatha is trying to just mess with him, maybe, because we now know that like Agatha has control over the hex. So like maybe she's like, nope, not done with you yet.
So yeah, the scenes that we haven't seen so far left are Wanda and Vision. So there's the scene where Wanda is in like the black and white realm, which I'm assuming is going to be like an origin type of deal. Like next week we'll see like Wanda's origin in terms of the story.
Yeah,
where she's like sort of like comes up, and then like there's Vision opposite her in black and white, and she's like in color.
There's also a scene of them like in a house holding hands, looking at something.
And that's the.
And they're wearing a different costume than the ones they're wearing right now. So.
Yes, and that's the why don't we do it together sort of thing, like save the place.
Oh yeah.
There's the scene with the Mind Stone where there's like Wanda's creating it again, where she's like.
I saw that scene again recently, and it looks like she is breaking the Mind Stone out of Loki's scepter. Like there's like a clear like blue thing, and she's like.
That's what confuses me though, because that's why it looks like she's in the outfit that she wore in Winter Soldier at the end when she's being experimented on. But we know that it's in the scepter again.
I think it might be like an origin story kind of thing, or like Agatha messing with her mind or something.
Could be, or like I was like. Maybe she's like steals the body, and then she's like making this, put it in. He's like, "Oh, hello everyone."
Probably my oldest friend.
He's like, only display tells. She's like, excuse me. So that could be like we know that scene's in it. I'm trying to think what else there's a scene where Wanda is in the town and all the people are standing around her in a circle, like all the townspeople. So I'm like, what's that got to do with it? Like, what's going on there?
That's the thing. It's like I like these scenes out of context, like trigger so much stuff in my brain, but I'm like, I have no idea what any of this could be, and I love it. I love that this entire show I haven't been able to be like, oh, this is the direction they're going in.
Yeah,
because I just don't know, which is kind of a rare thing as like a comic fan sometimes, where you're like, yeah, I can kind of see where they're going with this. Like, yeah,
absolutely crazy. So my crazy assumption is that next week will be a 30 to 40 minute episode, like this week, which would be like a sort of origin, like one of those episodes where it's like going through Wanda's mind, and then at the end she snaps, and then she's like, her and Vision come back together. Maybe Vision snaps her out of it, and it's like, okay, well then we'll fight for the town, and then the final episode will be like an hour long. Is that a good assumption?
I'm so excited. It is unfair that we have to wait till Friday.
I know.
And then this Friday is going to be really painful because then we got like to wait for the finale.
I'm excited. No matter what happens, I'm excited.
I just want them to be okay.
She's been through enough.
I want to have one good thing.
And Vision has also died and been brought back and died and been brought back like 50 times in the comics. It's fine. Let him live. It's okay.
Throw him in a bag of rice.
That's the thing. People keep saying if he survives, that somehow makes his death not important. And I'm like, that's bullshit.
Enough people died in Endgame. It's fine. We don't need anybody else to die for a while. It's okay.
Like Tony's gonna come back up, you know. He's a robot, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of Vision's thing. He gets dismantled, brought back in a different form. like
people saying like they want Vision to come back like in all white and like not fancy Wonder. I'm like, well, first of all, fuck you.
White Vision is so stupid. White Vision is the product of a writer who wanted to tell a story where Wanda went crazy and went against the Avengers, and the only way you could do that was like taking away your kids and killing Vision, essentially. It's such a dumb story. Sorry. I was rereading it recently, and I was like, this is so fucking stupid.
It's like, I don't like you anymore. Bye. I'm like, shut up, Vision. If you do, it's Wanda. And I don't think that works in that's the difference between comics, because you can have something in comics and it can't translate to screen, because I don't think there's any way possible that any amount of writing will prove to me that even if you're a robot or someone like a human being, there's no way that you see Elizabeth Olsen and say, look, I don't like her anymore. It's just impossible. Absolutely impossible, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, Scarlet Witch. No, I'm in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
God bless
Wanda is the strongest Avenger.
I mean,
that is true. Absolutely. Sorry, Hulk. Well, that's all we got time for this week. We'll be back next time for episode 8 of WandaVision on PonderVision. Abby, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Abby M. Cecilia. You can also hear me screaming about Star Wars and putting my fist through things on my Star Wars podcast, Lousy Beautiful Town, Star Wars in quotation marks. That is at LBT Pod, and I host that with my best friend Jess. And I want to throw in a little teaser to be on the lookout for Encyclopedia, which is a podcast network that was created by our friend Danny, that maybe you might see a little something from me and Danny. So who knows?
Also, shout out to Danny and the Encyclopedia Trivia Nights.
Yeah, those are
we
fun.
both hosted separately, but they're so much fun. And if you haven't, do it. It's pretty cool. Ash, where can people find you?
You can find me on my, again, very loosely Star Wars podcast, Rogue Podron, and also keep an eye on the Encyclopedia Network for something that I'm working on.
You can find me on Twitter at CMWASHBY. It's down below. You can also follow me on the Imperial Senate podcast. Again, another loose Star Wars podcast. We do try to speak about the news, but that changes into really weird conversations about things that probably shouldn't be said on a Star Wars podcast. Actually, that's a lie. Everyone wants to know, like, about Count Dooku's penis. It's curved. It's curved.
Universal.
I'm just saying. Have you seen young Christopher Lee? Hawooga. Plastified. Double the fall.
I'm like sitting here like I have any room to stand on from the stuff that we talk about on Rogue Pod.
Oh yeah. Same with Lousy Beautiful Town. Like we have a whole ass joke about a cartoon character cuckolding Dave Filoni. So I can't talk.
We've all been there. Yeah. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. This is a really long episode of PonderVision because there's so much to talk about with these episodes. It's so dense. It's so great content. We'll be back next time. Yeah, see you then. Bye.